we just talk. It's forward.
Watu wa Mungu, Be the vocalist hapa. And I'm just here to give you a testament. I am a living testimony of the slogan of Hope FM, where they say, listen and live. I am such a serious testimony and a testament to that, a statement, because they have impacted my life big time. And imagine ile kitu wanauliza ni ati, the way they have impacted my life and your life. Tunaweza jaribu pia to spread hii kitu mpaka uko mashinani, to spread hii word ya God uko mashinani. And the only thing they're requesting us to do is just contribute 100 bob. We just become partners with them. Na unapatana tu na so. Alright? Andika tu FOH, yani Friends of Hope. Alafu tuma ile kitu natuma. Hapo mbele ni pin number yako na ni siri yako. Alafu tu ushamaliza hii kitu. Click on the send. Na imagine utakuwa umefanya kitu moja serious sana. We as Hope Media tutakuwa tumereach out to one soul. God bless you. Be there.
Hello, viewer, and welcome to Spotlight here on Hope TV, where you look and live. And on Spotlight, we are always doing our very best to bring you persons who are doing different things in the community to direct us in the direction of light. And talking about light, one of the things that really sometimes as Christians is difficult to navigate are some moral dilemmas that we find. For instance, we ask ourselves, is it okay to lie sometimes? Is it okay sometimes to hide some details? We sometimes struggle with some moral situations. And for instance, right now we have a strike situation. And as a Christian doctor, what do you do? Do you go to the streets or do you remain in the hospital and treat? How do you manage that? So these are moral dilemmas that we often find ourselves in, and we don't know sometimes how to navigate that. Even in the Bible sometimes we read, for instance, Esther is told by Mordecai, do everything else but don't say where you come from. Oh, don't disclose your identity. So what about that? Is that like a half-truth or what's going on there? Now, moral dilemmas, and we are glad on this edition of Spotlight to be joined by one able theologian who will guide us on how to navigate these moral dilemmas, and this is Dr. John Njoroge. Now, Dr. John Njoroge is an apologist. People he'll tell us what an apologist is, but he's also a theologian, and again, we are engaging moral dilemmas as Christians. And as always, you're part of this conversation. Do engage us on the social media platforms. At the same time, also on the WhatsApp line provided. We're here live to talk about moral dilemmas. Dr. Njoroge, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Happy to have you.
Yeah.
And I know that you are big on apologetics. That's what we're going to be talking about. But just tell us who an apologist is.
It's not a person who goes about apologizing for being a Christian. An apologist is somebody who answers questions people have about the faith. We have, for example, in 1 Peter 3 and verse 15, we are given a direct command to do apologetics. It says, but in your heart set apart Christ as Lord, and always be prepared to give an answer to anyone who asks for the hope that for the hope that you have, but do so with gentleness and with respect. That word translated answer is the Greek word apologia, from which the word apologist comes from. So it's something that has been done historically from the very beginning in the scriptures. It's just that we have moved away from it in recent years, that people find it strange. I remember speaking at a conference in somewhere, and I overheard when they saw I had not spoken yet, these two ladies, they saw my title, apologist. And I remember them saying, well, people have really gone far looking for titles just to make themselves sound important. And so that's not what it is. It's just answering questions that people have about their faith.
I think that forms a program by itself, so you'll be back. Now, for today, let's talk about moral dilemmas.
Yeah.
Now, one of the big things about the Christian faith is, there are clear lines drawn. We are told about darkness and light. Talk about righteousness, right? Sometimes you meet situations whereby you don't know whether to tell the whole truth or to tell some lies, because some lies will boost the situation. And so sometimes you find, yes, there is black and there is white, but sometimes, they are what you can call like, parts of gray, and gray looks like the right thing to do, Maybe you can tell us now, what is this area? What's this dilemma? Why can't just right be all the time right and wrong be wrong without having to, find some gray corridors sometimes?
Yeah, right is right and wrong is wrong. That's set. We have to understand why we struggle in making decisions and all that. We have to make a distinction between reality as it is and our capacity to understand it, knowing reality. Those are two different things. So reality is the way it is, but our capacity to comprehend it, to understand it, takes a lot of work for us to be able to learn to think properly about something. If you take, for example, the universe or our bodies, to know how to treat diseases and all that when something goes wrong, it takes a lot of work for us to learn, for the doctors to learn how to do that, to treat bodies. So it's the gray comes about because we are limited as human beings in our capacity to understand and to know things. And it takes a lot of work, and that's why moral education becomes extremely important. We make the mistake of thinking that we would just pick up good morals and all that as we go along in life, that is obvious to everybody. That is really not true. Moral education, moral training ought to be a part of what we do. And I don't know how seriously we take it in our school curriculum, for example. We have to train our children to be moral people. We have to train adults to be moral people. We cannot assume they'll just pick it up. It doesn't happen that way. And because of that, or not fully understanding, comprehending whatever we're trying to study or to know, we get into those areas where we really are not sure what decision to make in a particular case. That's part of living in a fallen world. And again, we must be prepared to train ourselves, to train our children to think morally, because if we don't do that, we end up with people who are very well-meaning, but they are very wrong-headed in the decisions that they will make. Yeah, and then another thing that happens is, if you don't train people to be moral, you will not end up with people who are guided by principles. A person who cannot be bought or sold for anything. They know this is what I'm supposed to do, and they will stick to that. And it's very difficult to find people like that unless they have been properly trained and equipped to be moral human beings who can be able to honor God in what they do, or to honor or to love their neighbor, and to do what they're supposed to do. Yeah, so that's the issue, the area of knowledge. Yeah, so we have morality, right and wrong, and good and bad as they really are. But then the path to that destination requires a lot of work and training and understanding.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like the way you actually say that right is right, wrong is wrong, gray is the struggle.
Yeah.
You know, it's the wrestling.
Yes.
Now, we're staying with that wrestling, Dr. John. Let's look at denominations.
Yeah.
Now, denominations are denominations because they have different convictions, or say they have different sets of right.
Yeah.
Let me give you an example. Just as something as common as communion. Some denominations will not take wine at all.
Yeah.
Because they say it's wrong. Some other will say we can take juice because the Bible does not talk about juice. We are closer to the Bible than, you know. Let's even talk about different, like even things, issues like polygamy, for instance.
Yeah.
Some denominations are fine. They will accept, you know, polygamous families and don't even talk about it. Others will not touch them. You know, will not touch them. Say, hey, you know, that's dark, right? And all because they say this is wrong, you know, and this is right. Then, in terms of the faith, then, with all these denominational strong positions, then how can we then say that faith is harmonious?
We can't say that faith is harmonious despite all the differences. If we stick to what a maxim that is attributed to St. Augustine, he said, in essentials, unity, in non-essentials, liberty, and in all things, charity. And what he meant by that is this: there are doctrines of the faith, there is what Christianity is, and there are doctrines that are at the core of what the faith really is. Those are essentials. If you deny even one of those doctrines, you end up in heresy. But there are others, so in those we have to be united. You have to be one in those. If you deny those, you're no longer a Christian. But there are others that are non-essential. They're very, very important, and we need to talk about them. But they are non-essential in the sense that we can disagree. We can have different interpretations of those, and it's okay to disagree on those because they are non-essential. There are others. Then he says, in all things, unity. So we are supposed to be fighting for unity. For all of us as believers, even when we're in different denominations. Now, doctrines that are essential include doctrines like, for example, the deity of Jesus Christ, that he was God and man at the same time, and the Trinity, God the Son, God the Father, God the Holy Spirit, the inspiration of the Scriptures, the sinfulness of man, the sufficiency of the atonement, and the need to confess and accept Christ to be saved. Those are essentials. You cannot deny any of those and be a Christian. But in non-essential doctrines include the mode of baptism, for example. Should you be sprinkled or should you be immersed in water? We can debate those and we can disagree on those. They are very important, but they are not essential. They don't lie at the core of what the faith, of what our faith is. So we do see differences, we do see disagreements, but that doesn't mean our faith is not harmonious. It's still harmonious. And it goes back to what I said before. We know in part, as Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. So there are things that you may see things different ways. And God made us in diverse ways. And so there are things you feel more attracted to. For example, there are people who like hymns in church. They'll go to a church because they sing hymns and they preach in the traditional ways. There are others who they go to church for the music, for the dancing, and for all of that. And there's really nothing wrong with that. It's just that we are diverse. We see things differently, but we must be united at the core of what Christianity is about. Because if we deviate from the essential doctrines of the church, we are no longer in the Christian fold, and that's a serious error, serious mistake. Yeah.
You know, you talk about the cause of the faith, and maybe other debatables. Now let's talk about a core family. Now, the core family here is the family of Mary and Joseph. And there are dilemmas there.
Yeah.
Because an angel comes and tells Mary, you'll be with child. This child is of the Spirit.
Yeah.
Now, Joseph comes to learn about this. The right thing to do, and the Bible records that he was a gentleman, is divorce Mary quietly.
Yeah.
But God says, no, don't leave
Yeah.
the girl, because what she has is of the Spirit.
Yeah.
Now, just that whole situation there, maybe you analyze it for us in terms of dilemmas.
Yeah, and I would say that that's not a dilemma in the classical sense of the term in ethics, because it's explained to Joseph, this is why you need to do this, and he's actually told what to do. So it becomes an easier decision for him. A dilemma in ethics is where you are confronted by two or more choices, and any choice that you take, you're going to make a moral mistake, a serious moral mistake. That's what a dilemma is. And if you choose not to make any decision, you will still make a serious mistake. So that's what a dilemma is in ethics. I saw a movie many years ago called Sophie's Choice. Maybe you've seen it also. It's a heart-wrenching movie because you have this mom, this lady who has two of her boys with her during the Nazi era, and a Nazi soldier comes to her and says, "You have the I'll give you a choice. It's a choice you have to make. I'll save one of your boys, but you decide which one I save. You take one, the other one will kill. If you choose not to choose either one of them, we'll kill both of them." And that's a really difficult thing to do, because if you choose one, you feel like you condemn the other one to death. If you don't choose any, if you say I will not make that choice, you condemn both of them to death. That's a very that's a dilemma. That's a real dilemma, because whatever you do, whether you choose not to act, you are making a mistake. That's a real dilemma. Now with Joseph, and I won't tell the viewers what Sophie chose to do. Maybe they can watch the movie, because if you choose not to. If you choose not to not to pick any of the boys, you suffer the consequences for the rest of your life, feeling like you condemned the boys and all that, your children and all that. With Joseph, he was not facing a dilemma at all, because God told him, "Here's what's going on. You just take care of Mary until the baby comes." So I see that as a more of a straightforward issue. I don't see a dilemma there. The ones you mentioned earlier about, for example, when Samuel was going to anoint David, and he says to God, "Well, if Saul hears I'm doing that, he's going to kill me." And then God says, "Don't talk about that. Just go and say you came to do a sacrifice." And then you wonder, what in the world
what's going on? Yeah.
Are we involved with? Is God encouraging us to tell lies when it's convenient for us? And again, I think there we have to make a distinction between concealing information and telling lies. Those are not the same thing. You don't. There's no law that says that you have to tell people everything that you know or everything you're going to do. There's no law that says that. And Samuel did actually offer the sacrifice. So there was no lie involved there. So there's a difference between concealing information and telling lies. I remember discussing something like this with a friend of mine who was saying that any type of situation where you don't reveal everything that you're doing is a lie, and you're disobeying God's law. So I asked my friend, what if let's say I'm not in my house and I leave the lights on inside to make anybody trying to break in think that there's actually somebody in the house, and I said, is that lying? And my friend, believe it or not, said, yes, you are lying and you're breaking God's law. I said, okay, what about if I'm playing basketball and I make you believe I'm moving this way, but I go a different way. Am I lying? Now he stopped. He didn't. He still hasn't answered that.
Yeah.
Because there are situations where, for example, in war, if you display everything that you're planning to do in war, you're going to lose the war. So that's not the same thing as the same scenario as telling as deliberately telling a lie.
All right, let's stay with that, and let's take a live situation.
Yeah.
You're a Christian doctor,
Yeah.
and the doctors are on strike right now, and there are news all over that because of the strike, people are dying. And as a Christian, you choose to stay in the streets, or to, march with the rest of the medics.
Yeah.
At the same time, your mind is querying you. People are dying because you're here.
Yeah.
Can you help us navigate that?
Yeah. And that's a really difficult one. And the reason is it's not just that they are choosing to go to the streets for no reason at all. There's some of them will go for months without getting paid. Some of them, and they're human beings just like we are. They have struggles just like any of us does. And so this is a question for all of us as a society in Kenya that we need to confront and be able to solve this problem, especially our government. This issue needs to be settled and solved because what is happening is the people who are taking the brunt of this whole issue are innocent and the most vulnerable in our community. So this is when you hear what is going on with agreements that are not honored, you kind of sympathize with the doctors, and we need this issue to be solved. Now, as a Christian, how do you think of it? Now, there are mainly two approaches to medical work and pretty much to anything for us as Christians. You can look at it as a covenant between you and God, as a calling that God has called you to, or you can look at it as a contract where you are earning a living using your gifts and talents. If you look at it as a contract, then this is not even there's no question about this. I didn't get paid, and I'm back. I go to the streets until I get paid. But if you look at it as a calling or as a covenant between you and God, you at least must struggle with the decision to leave somebody knowing that this person might actually die, and be on the streets knowing that you can be able to help that person. That's a very difficult thing, and it's something that for those of us who are, for those doctors and nurses who are committed to Christ, you must examine your heart before Christ to decide what you're going to do. There have been situations where people have sacrificed a lot for the sake of the gospel to be able to help other people. I have worked with some missionary doctors right here in our country, where we have gone to other countries to share the gospel, because you can't say that's what you're there to do. But I accompany them. They're doing the medical work, and I share the gospel. And I look at these people. They're extremely gifted surgeons who would be multimillionaires back in their countries, but they have chosen to be here, and they have to keep almost like begging people to support the work that they're doing here to raise money. And they present us with a very difficult challenge, because we need. And what I'm saying is this: I don't see how anybody can be able to go to work day in, day out without getting paid at all. That needs to be solved. So I understand that point. I see that point. It must be done. At the same time, as a Christian, if you don't struggle with the fact that the human beings are called to help, made in the image of God, that God cares about each one of them, that if you don't struggle with that, you have a serious questions that you need to be dealing with, because the calling that God has placed on us as human beings, the very first commandment, the greatest commandment, is to love God and to love neighbor. We're supposed to be living like that. And so this issue of contract and money and all that comes second to that. So at least struggle with it. At least think about it. And I wish when you're dealing with unions, you are not going to be looking at the calling and the covenant part of it. You are only looking at the bottom line when you're dealing with unions. But as a Christian, that this has to be it has to be in the equation. That these are human beings made in the image of God who really could use your help, and it also speaks to your faith in God to be able to provide for you as you seek to honor Him.
Okay.
Again, this doesn't mean the issue is easy and it doesn't need to be addressed. It's a serious question, and it does need to be addressed by our leaders. Because and I'm sorry to put it this way, we struggle to pay doctors, right? But we don't really struggle that much to pay our politicians, to pay people who should be making these decisions.
Yeah.
We don't struggle there, and so it's. And the other point that really needs to be made is this: we are a very young nation. We need all the talent that we can get, and if we don't solve these problems, the best of our minds will be serving somewhere else. They'll be in other countries, serving other people instead of being here, helping us build our nation. We have the facilities to be able to have people coming from other countries for treatment in our country. And if we make this environment favorable for them, I personally know people who are doctors in other countries who will be willing to come back immediately to come and serve here. And the final thing I want to say is I really do I do kind of understand this struggle with the doctors, and the reason is like I said, I've worked with doctors. I actually wanted to become a doctor myself. I was given a scholarship to go and study medicine in the U.S., but God called me to do something different. So I follow doctors. I have many friends who are doctors, and I can tell you this. I read a statistic that was really troubling, that in the U.S., the U.S. loses 400 medical professionals every year to suicide. It's a very stressful field, and they take years to train, and they graduate, and here they are to serve us. We cannot afford to fail them. We need to solve these problems so they can be able to continue with it. But as Christians, we really must struggle with the fact that we are dealing with human beings made in the image of God that we are also called to serve.
All right. And it's very insightful there about the call and the contract and the wrestling, that at the very least, let there be a wrestling about, this situation. Now, maybe a more specific question on the same matter, like being in the streets and being in the hospital with the patients. Where is God? Who is God for? Is God for the patient more, or is God for the doctor in the street more? I mean, how do you locate God? Like the doctor in the street may say, "God is with me," and the patient on the dying bed is also like, "Where is God?" Like, how do you locate God?
I would say God is with both of them, because the doctor is on the streets because he or she is suffering in some way. If you go from months without being paid, or you are promised a salary that really never seems to materialize, you will suffer suffering. You suffer psychologically. You suffer want. You suffer need. I have friends who are doctors, and they're going through this issue. And that's what I'm saying. We must understand their plight, and we must do everything we can to help solve this problem. So God is with them, but it's possible for them not to be with God if you don't really care about the patients who you could help and you're not helping. If that's not eating you up, not really giving you sleepless nights, something is wrong, because we need to be able to care for human beings. We are all. The Bible says we are all.
But at the same time, there's a loyalty here to your boss, your employer. And many of us long for people who, to solve this dilemma in one way. I mean, just jump ship, you know, be with the people, you know. But is it that easy?
It depends on who your boss is. You said a couple of times you have loyalty to your boss. It depends on who that is. If your boss is the God of the universe, that's who you answer to, then that's an easy decision. You should not sit around and watch people being oppressed while and be part of that system. You should, at the very least, speak out and be able to. Most of these people are elected into those positions, and people elect you because they think you're going to be able to represent them. So you need to be able to speak out and be able to stand. And that's why we started by talking about the significance of being morally equipped so that you can be able to stand on principle. I remember giving an example several times at a pastor's conference. I say, for example, let's assume I'm a pastor of a very successful church. It's a very beautiful sanctuary, but I do have a pulpit, a wooden pulpit that is very old and ugly looking, but I cherish it because that's where I started, so I keep it. And then a pastor down the street is starting a church, and he comes to me and says to me, "I don't have a pulpit. Let me buy this one from you. I'll give you say 4,000 shillings for it, and I can use it. But right now I only have 2,000, so I'll give you 2,000. I'll come back and give you the rest 2,000, and then I'll pick it up then." And I say, "Fine, that's okay." He needs a pulpit. He's a minister just like I am, and so he leaves. I take the 2,000 shillings. Then a friend of mine, who is even more successful than I am, a big name pastor, comes to my church. He sees that pulpit and he says, "I have been looking for a pulpit like this for a long time, and I want this one. Let me give you 100,000 shillings for it." And I ask in conferences, how many of you would keep that pulpit for the first pastor who is going to give you only 4,000 for it? I'm yet to find people who don't struggle out of that, who say, or maybe I'll buy him another pulpit, maybe I'll do this, I'll take the hand. If you really cannot, if your word doesn't mean anything, then you can be bought. I mean, let's assume you are a politician, and there's this country somewhere that is willing to give you personally, they will give you, say, 2 billion shillings to allow a certain project to be done in your country. And you know it really should not be done in your country because it's not going to benefit a lot of people. But you personally will benefit. You get 2 billion dollars shillings out of this. Then how many people will stand on principle and say this is wrong, this should not be done? Until we get people who can be able to stand on principle and say this is the right thing, and we're going to do the right thing. And if I'm in the cabinet and these things are going the wrong way, I'm going to resign. And I'm not going to be a part of this. Until we get people who can be able to stand on principle, this is going to be a joke. We'll just be going to be talking about this over and over again until we get statesmen, people who really do care about other people and who cannot be bought, who will say, this is the right thing and I'm doing it because it's the right thing. I've had experiences myself where I was really faced with a decision like that. When my family and I moved here from the US, we got a container, a 40-foot container. We filled everything in there. We have an orphanage, as children's home in Mahio. So we put everything in it, in the container, and we shipped it here. We got to Mombasa the day they were opening it. And they said, they opened it, they looked at it, and then they closed it. And they said everything was okay. But then they said, they wrote a report and said, you have a lot of brand new TVs and computers and all the things that were not there. It was not true. They said, give us 30,000 shillings, will reach your container. And I said to them, look, I just moved into this country, moving back home to come and preach the gospel. If I start out by giving bribes, what gospel do I have left to preach? And I'll never forget this. These men laughed at me to my face, and they said, you call pastors and bishops and all that who have ever passed anything through here, they all pay us. This is what these men told us. They all give us the money that you're calling bribes. They said, who do you think you are? This is not America. This is Kenya. This is how things work here. And I said to them, the God who presides over America is the same God who presides over Kenya and the whole world. And we are answerable to him. And I said, I am willing to lose everything in that container to stand for what is right. But here's what I want you to do. Let's go back to that container, take that report, you show me all the things you've listed here. If those things are there, I will pay the government the legitimate amount I need to pay the government. Even if it's $1,000, I will raise the money, I'll pay. But I'm not giving you even 1 shilling as a bribe to release that container. It took 3 days of going back and forth with these people to release it. These things, this should not be happening. It should not be happening. This is a straightforward thing, and that is just appalling. So we're just playing games.
Okay.
As long as you have people who are collecting bribes on the roads and all that, corruption is a big issue here. And it's a serious problem that we need to deal with. As you can tell, I can actually go up on this for a long time.
Yeah, Dr. Njoroge, I think you've made it clear to us that there are situations that sometimes we'll wrestle with. You've told us that when we find ourselves in the either-ors, at the very least, let's allow ourselves to wrestle. Let's allow ourselves to wrestle with that, because if you don't wrestle, it means your conscience is gone. But also you've said something that it's quite helpful, that in all these situations, just name whom you want to please. Name whom you'd want to please. Do you want to please, for instance, an authority? Do you want to please yourself? Or do you want to please God? That should help you in resolving.
Who's your boss?
Who is your boss? That would help you in a lot in resolving a dilemma. This is an ongoing conversation. We hope to engage again, on another time. But the main question tonight is just ask yourself, who is your boss?
Exactly.
Viewer, we've been talking about moral dilemmas, and sometimes they look very tricky, to engage. But one way in which we can be able to resolve them is asking ourselves, who is our boss? Are you going through a hard time, a dilemma situation? The question is, who is your boss? If your boss is God, choose him. This has been Spotlight. Thank you for watching.